Also looking for new lawyers are the dozens of unlawful agitators who were arrested during No Kings events this weekend. Protests in several cities got out of hand as other marches saw communists demanding a revolution. Watch.
There is only one solution! Communist revolution! Communist revolution!
Just before Saturday's nationwide protests, organizer Ezra Levin brushed aside this show's concerns about violence. I'm just curious who you're welcoming in, given that there are training materials from these groups that advocate for violence.
Oh, I want to be very clear. This is foundationally nonviolent. And that's not just me saying this. This isn't our first rodeo, Katie.
So, is such violence unavoidable, and should Democrats be distancing themselves? Joining us now, Seattle radio host Jason Rantz and Democratic strategist Richard Goodstein. So, Richard, this keeps happening at these leftist organized protests. What do you think about distancing yourself from them?
So we've now had 3 of these No Kings rallies, and 2 things are moving up and 1 is moving down. The number of people participating in them has gone from 5 to 7 and now 8 million people. And the odds of the Democrats winning back control of the House and Senate have gone up rather substantially since the first one of these, June of 2025. And one thing's moving down quite substantially, which is Donald Trump's poll ratings, his approval ratings.
What about the violence?
The number, and look, Katie, here's the definition of concerns that you should. Listen, Katie, I didn't hear people when there were Confederate flags being carried on January 6th through Congress. I didn't see any criticism on the right about Trump supporters using flags to beat the hell out of cops on January 6th. So somehow,
federal prison.
Listen, you're conflating 2 things. There's these people, yeah, I'd rather not see communist flags. But you know what I also rather not see? A president who's helping real communists by lifting sanctions on Russia, by looking the other way when Russia is advising Iran about how to kill U.S. servicemen, by basically letting Cuba have oil to run its economy. That's supporting real communists. Forget flags.
Well, the president's about to take down the Cuban regime, which is a communist regime. So we'll see what happens in a couple of weeks.
Yet.
Jason, last week, America had no kings. Glad we had the march over the weekend. Proved that we have a First Amendment in this country when it's peaceful. The president is still in the White House, hasn't wavered on his agenda. As Richard mentioned, there is an effort here outside of the violence to get some electoral gains that they can use in November to win back the House of Representatives. Can they do that without embracing the communists who keep showing up to these rallies and turning it into violence?
I mean, if they could do that, they would have no problem condemning this kind of behavior and condemning some of the fringe elements of this movement. But they're too scared because they realize that they might be vulnerable. They're being held hostage by activists, a part of the base of the Democratic Party. And as much as we hear Richard talking about, going after Iran, you had people who are out on the streets who were actively supporting Iran, and not just Iranian regime, but they were also supporting Hamas. That is the base of this movement. And if you're unwilling to call this out, if you're unwilling to set a clear moral separation between good and evil, you're always going to be vulnerable to the crazies. And the more that this is exposed, the better it is, frankly, for Republicans, because people don't want to be associated with lunatics like what showed up over the weekend. Not everyone was in the lunatic fringe. But let's be clear, they're being taken advantage of in a contrived movement from foreign billionaires who are looking to disrupt our elections and to disrupt our democracy. And Democrats are happy to accept that.
Richard, in the summer of 2020, we saw the worst riots in American history, $2 billion worth of damage, people were killed. Why is it that this keeps happening with these same groups that organize and then change their name to something else when it's convenient? We're seeing that happening election year after election year after election year. Should there be some distance? Are these groups the ones pushing the Democratic Party in electoral positions, in Congress and elsewhere, local races, further and further to the left?
You know, I know why you're trying to steer this conversation this way. There were 8 million people. Very, very few of them did anything violent. and the violence should be, absolutely something we should not abide. But the reason that you want to focus on the violence is because, again, when Democrats have competed statewide in Virginia, in New Jersey, they're not talking about Hamas. They're actually distancing themselves from Hamas. They're talking about very moderate programs. This communist stuff has nothing to do with why Democrats have outperformed Republicans by 10, 15, 20% in every single race, red, blue, since the day that Donald Trump took office. So I understand why you want to talk about communists and violence, because the voters see right through it. They're nauseated by the higher prices. They don't like this war. People like Joe Rogan say they feel deceived. So look, there's a reason that CPAC conference was such a bust this past weekend. And when people cheered for the idea of impeachment hearings, they cheered for that at CPAC. This movement is dead. I'm sorry, and I understand why you want to change the idea to talk about communists and violence.
Well,
That's a fiction.
Jason, Richard, to be fair, I'm talking about violence because it has happened over and over and over again, and I've been to a number of these rallies that turn into riots where I see Hamas flags, where I see the Communist Party out there. And I'm just saying, maybe you want to win elections without having that inside of the coalition. And I understand that Democrats win in Virginia and New Jersey, but those are deep blue states where you should be winning anyway. So we got to run.
They're winning in Mississippi. They're winning in Miami. No, I'm sorry. They're winning every single place. There have been contested elections.
It is rare for a Republican to win in Miami, but I'm glad that we're pointing that out.
The mayor, the Republican candidate got 78% last time. The Democrat got 60 this time. Sorry, it's changing.
Things change in Miami. Good to see you, Richard. We lost Jason Rantz's shot, but thanks to him for coming by. And Richard, we'll see you again soon. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.